This is Impact on BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. The Pakistani Supreme Court has begun hearing arguments over whether the dissolution of the country's parliament yesterday was legal. The National Assembly was dissolved at the request of Prime Minister Imran Khan after the Deputy Speaker blocked a vote of no confidence against him. Well, I'm joined now by Hussein Haqqani, former Pakistani ambassador to the United States, who now works for the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C. Ambassador Haqqani, thanks very much for joining us. So Imran Khan is really fighting for his political life, and that decision really could be made in the next day or so. The Pakistani nation is gripped. So the question is, what happens next?
Well, we can't be sure. And the reason for that is very simple. The events of the last few days prove what some critics have been saying for years. Pakistan is just not a normal country. In any other parliamentary democracy, coalition partners leave your coalition, Prime Minister resigns. He can ask for new elections, but he cannot do that if the Constitution says you can't dissolve Parliament while a vote of no confidence is pending against you. The Speaker cannot invoke a foreign conspiracy that has not been proved anywhere in any court to basically postpone or delay or reject a vote of no confidence. Yet all those things have happened in the country. As far as the Supreme Court is concerned, it has a checkered history. We do not know what kind of a judgment it will give. Will it just say, let bygones be bygones, now let's have an election? Or will it say, yes, an illegality was committed, but let's still move on? Lastly, although Imran Khan alleges that the Pakistani opposition, which now comprises 196 members of parliament, an overwhelming majority, that they conspired with a foreign power, no action is being taken against anybody. In fact, he's negotiating with them about a caretaker government to hold elections. So all these things amount to making a mockery of democratic process, of constitutional process, and basically makes everything in Pakistan more uncertain than ever.
So tell us about this conspiracy or this plot by a foreign power, namely the United States, that Imran Khan has been speaking about, and so has his party over the last few days.
Well, the allegation is that the American Assistant Secretary of State told the Pakistani ambassador in Washington, D.C., that the U.S. didn't like Imran Khan. What's so unusual about that? There is no statement, nothing expressly saying, oh, by the way, we are going to send money to the opposition so that they can actually get members of PTI to switch sides. None of that. There is really no evidence. Right now, I live in Washington, D.C. It's so difficult to get any interest from American officials in Pakistan that to think that there would be a conspiracy about Imran Khan or Pakistan just reflects Imran Khan's narcissism. He thinks everybody is thinking about him, whereas in Washington, D.C., nobody is really thinking about him. And what would America get from toppling him? They certainly won't get any cooperation if he survives, and they won't get any cooperation from an opposition that comes into power under the shadow of having been supported by the Americans. So it just does not add up. But remember my comment about Pakistan not being a normal country. Here's a country where former lieutenant generals are tweeting a conspiracy theory as if it was a fact. These are people who live in their own world, and that world is reinforced every day with these Pakistani television channels that espouse conspiracy theories, of which they never provide any evidence.
Well, he's spoken about a memo or a sort of a note, a letter that went out, and your name has come out, or at least the accusation has been that you have somehow been involved.
These are two separate things. Imran Khan can't actually make a speech about America without mentioning me somehow. I appreciate his affections for me. The fact of the matter is that the allegation about the so-called letter is that there is no letter. It is a communication by the Pakistani ambassador to the US to Pakistan's Foreign Office detailing a meeting he had with the Assistant Secretary of State. Now, what I have heard from American sources is that this was a farewell lunch because the ambassador was leaving Washington, and the Assistant Secretary, out of courtesy, went to that lunch. And at that lunch, the Assistant Secretary may have used some testy or harsh language. In fact, the Pakistani National Security Council, in its statement on the subject, says that undiplomatic language was used, and that's all Pakistan has officially protested. The rest of it is Imran Khan's political noise. As far as I'm concerned, I sit in an American think tank. I served as Pakistan's ambassador 10 years ago. I believe I did Pakistan well during that period. Pakistan received billions of dollars in American assistance. We had good relations at the time. Relations have not been as good since then. But Imran Khan at that time also used to accuse me of being pro-American. He wants somehow to, he believes somehow that an anti-American person can somehow get more done with America than somebody who's perceived as America's friend. I have no role whatsoever in Pakistan's
So he's saying that you met with Asif Ali Zardari in London, and that's
I have not met Mr. Zardari since for at least 10 years. I have not met any of Pakistan's major politicians. If in fact only those people who come through Washington meet me, and they're all welcome to meet me. If Imran Khan ever gets another invitation to Washington, D.C. and wants to have a cup of tea with me, I'd be happy to have that with him too, notwithstanding the fact that I think he has lost his marbles.
Ambassador Haqqani, I mean, regardless of what you think of Imran Khan, our correspondent Secunda Kermani went out into the streets of Islamabad, asked people what they thought about this potential conspiracy or plot. He said many people agreed with Imran Khan.
I'm sure they do. And that is going to be a disaster for Pakistan. Pakistan right now has inflation that is greater than the global average. GDP per capita in Pakistan has fallen in Imran Khan's rule. After a long time that has happened in Pakistan. Pakistan's stock market has not been able to reach the 2017 level after 3 years. Pakistan's rupee is in free fall. And with all those things going on, the only way to distract the people of Pakistan from their economic woes is to raise the specter of a foreign conspiracy. Also, to tell them that Islam's great glory is about to come through the hands of the guy who won the Cricket World Cup in 1992 is a powerful narrative for those who cannot think for themselves.
Ambassador Haqqani, fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Pleasure talking to you too.